My father stood up in the middle of the courtroom, pointed directly at me, and shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's a drug addict. She has been one for years. Don't let her fool you." The room fell completely silent. My aunt lowered her eyes, trying to hide a smile. My older brother leaned back in his chair, looking completely confident. Even my father's attorney looked certain the case had already been won. I didn't say a single word. I simply looked at the judge. He quietly closed the file in front of him, removed his glasses, and asked my father one calm question. "Mr. Parker, when was the last time you actually spoke to your daughter?" My father's face froze. For the first time that morning. He had no answer. "My name is Evelyn Parker. I'm 33 years old, and if there's one lesson life has taught me, it's this. Sometimes the people who know your past the best become the very people who refuse to see your future." For 10 years. My own family introduced me with the same sentence. "This is Evelyn, our daughter who ruined her life because of drugs." It didn't matter where we were. Birthday parties, Christmas dinners, family weddings, even funerals. Someone would ask what I did for a living. Before I could answer, my father always answered for me. "She's trying to get her life together." People would smile politely, then slowly move away from me, as if I were someone dangerous. The painful part wasn't what strangers believed. It was knowing my own family never gave me the chance to become someone new. But here's the truth. I was never addicted to drugs. Not once. When I was 23, my fiancé died from an accidental overdose after unknowingly taking counterfeit pills at a party. Watching the person I loved disappear in a single night shattered me. I couldn't sleep. I stopped eating. I quit my graduate program. For months, I barely left my apartment. Doctors diagnosed me with severe depression and complicated grief. I attended therapy every week. I took prescribed medication for anxiety. I slowly rebuilt my life. But somewhere along the way, someone in my family started changing the story. Therapy became rehab. Medication became drugs. Depression became addiction. And after enough years, the lie sounded like the truth. The person who repeated that lie more than anyone else was my father. Richard Parker believed people never truly changed. Once you made one mistake, that mistake became your identity forever. He never bothered asking how therapy was going. He never visited during counseling. He never celebrated when I graduated with honors years later. Instead, he kept telling everyone the version of me that no longer existed. Eventually, even my own relatives believed him. My older brother, Ethan, never corrected anyone. Why would he? Compared to the family disappointment, he looked perfect. Successful construction company. Beautiful wife. Big suburban house. Luxury SUV. Everyone admired Ethan. No one knew his business had quietly been losing money for almost 3 years. No one knew banks were refusing him new loans. No one knew my father had secretly mortgaged part of the family property to keep Ethan's company alive. I knew. Because I'd seen the financial records. But I never told anyone. Families protect each other. Even when they don't protect you. While everyone believed I was still broken, I built an entirely different life. After finishing graduate school, I earned advanced certifications in behavioral health and crisis intervention. For the last 7 years, I've been working with recovery centers, family counseling programs, and court-supported rehabilitation services across Illinois. Every day, I helped people rebuild lives after addiction. I helped parents reconnect with children. I helped veterans recover. I helped teenagers choose a different future. Ironically, the woman my family called a drug addict had quietly become one of the people helping others escape addiction. Because of strict confidentiality laws, I rarely talked about my work. I never posted awards online. I never bragged. I believed actions mattered more than explanations. I had no idea That silence would one day almost destroy my life. Everything changed after my grandmother passed away. Her estate included several valuable properties and investment accounts. According to her will, the family trust required a new managing trustee. To my surprise, Grandma had listed my name alongside my father's and Ethan's as one of the candidates. The moment my father saw that document, his expression changed. "This has to be a mistake," he said. "Evelyn can't be trusted with money." Within days, phone calls spread across the family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone heard the same story. "Don't let Evelyn fool you. She's still unstable." 10 years of lies suddenly became legal arguments. That's when I realized this wasn't about my past anymore. It was about millions of dollars. And someone was desperate to keep me from discovering the truth. I hired an attorney. Not to argue with my family, but to uncover what they were so afraid of. I had no idea. The evidence waiting inside those financial records would expose far more than a lie about me. It would reveal a secret my father and brother had spent years hiding. And that secret would change everything. The first person who took my side wasn't a relative. It wasn't even a friend. It was my attorney. Her name was Rebecca Lawson, and after reading my grandmother's trust documents, she looked up at me and asked, "Evelyn, has anyone ever shown you the complete financial records?" I shook my head. "No." She slowly closed the folder. "Then I think someone has been hiding something from you." A chill ran down my spine. For years, my family had convinced everyone that I was the problem. But what if I wasn't the one with something to hide? Over the next 2 weeks, Rebecca filed requests for every financial document connected to the Parker family trust. Bank statements, property records, loan agreements, investment reports. Thousands of pages. Most of it looked ordinary. Until one afternoon, Rebecca called me. Her voice sounded unusually serious. "Evelyn, I need you to come to my office." When I arrived, dozens of folders covered the conference table. She slid one document toward me. "Read the highlighted section." I did. Then I read it again. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. 3 years earlier, the family trust had quietly guaranteed a $2.8 million business loan. The borrower was Ethan's construction company. My heart started pounding. Grandma's trust wasn't supposed to guarantee private business debt. That violated everything she had written in her estate plan. "Were you told about this?" Rebecca asked. "No. Neither were the other beneficiaries." The deeper we looked, the worse it became. There wasn't just one loan. There were several. Money had been moved between trust accounts. Properties had been refinanced. Investment funds had disappeared and then reappeared under different accounts. Everything had one thing in common. Every decision had been approved by my father. And every dollar eventually benefited Ethan. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. "I don't think they expected anyone to read this closely." I stared silently at the paperwork. For 10 years, everyone had focused on my past. Meanwhile, no one had been paying attention to theirs. A week later, I received a call from my cousin, Lily. She sounded nervous. "Evelyn." "Yeah? I probably shouldn't tell you this." "What happened?" "I overheard Uncle Richard talking." My stomach tightened. "He said the court only needs to believe you're unstable." I didn't answer. Lily continued. "He said if the judge thinks you're unreliable, you'll never be allowed anywhere near the trust." I slowly closed my eyes. So that was the plan. Not proving I had done something wrong. Just repeating the same lie. Until everyone accepted it as truth. A few days later, another surprise arrived. A thick envelope. No return address. Inside were photocopies of emails. Some were over 4 years old. Others were recent. Every email was between my father and Ethan. One sentence immediately caught my attention. If Evelyn ever sees the audit, we're finished. I looked at Rebecca. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. There it was. Not a misunderstanding. Not family drama. A deliberate effort to keep me away from the financial records. Rebecca smiled for the first time in weeks. They'd built their entire case around your past. She tapped the stack of documents. We're going to build ours around facts. Over the next several days, we organized everything. Certified bank records. Trust amendments. Emails. Loan documents. Independent financial audits. Every page was numbered. Every signature verified. Every accusation answered with evidence. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. Because truth doesn't need a louder voice. It only needs proof. The morning of the hearing finally arrived. The courthouse in downtown Chicago buzzed with lawyers, families, and reporters covering unrelated cases. As I stepped out of the elevator, I saw my father. Ethan stood beside him. Both of them smiled. Not because they were happy. Because they thought they had already won. My father looked directly at me. Still pretending you've changed? I simply smiled back. Rebecca gently touched my arm. Don't answer. I nodded. We walked past them without saying a word. Inside courtroom 7. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The hearing officially began. For the first 20 minutes, everything unfolded exactly as my father had planned. Then, he suddenly stood up, pointed directly at me, and shouted the words he had been repeating for an entire decade. She's a drug addict. She has no business managing this family's money. The courtroom fell completely silent. Every head slowly turned toward me. And the judge reached for his glasses. The next question he asked would change every single person's life forever. The courtroom was so quiet that I could hear someone turning the pages of a legal notebook. My father was still standing. His finger pointed directly at me. She's a drug addict, he shouted again. She has spent years lying to everyone. She cannot be trusted with this family's future. Several relatives nodded. My aunt folded her arms with a satisfied smile. Ethan never looked at me. He kept staring at the judge, convinced the hearing was already over. But the judge didn't react the way they expected. Instead, he calmly removed his glasses and looked directly at my father. Mr. Parker. Yes, Your Honor? When was the last time you had a meaningful conversation with your daughter? My father hesitated. I don't remember. The judge nodded. And when was the last time you visited her workplace? Silence. Have you ever? More silence. Finally. No. The judge wrote something in his notes. Then he turned toward me. Ms. Parker. Yes, Your Honor. What exactly do you do for a living? I stood slowly. For the first time in years, my own family was about to hear the truth. I am a licensed behavioral health specialist. Several people exchanged confused looks. I continued. For the last 7 years, I've worked with court-approved recovery programs, family counseling services, and rehabilitation centers throughout Illinois. The room became noticeably quieter. My work focuses on helping people recover from addiction, trauma, and mental health crises. I paused. I also train counselors who work with families rebuilding their lives after substance abuse. Even the court reporter briefly looked up. Rebecca handed a thick folder to the court clerk. Inside were my professional licenses, employment records, state certifications, letters from judges, hospitals, and recovery organizations. The judge examined every page carefully. Then he stopped at one document. This says you've received the Illinois Community Recovery Excellence Award. Yes, Your Honor. And you've been invited to train new counselors? Yes. You've testified as an expert in recovery cases before? Several times. My father looked completely confused. It was obvious. He had never known any of this. Because he had never cared enough to ask. The judge slowly closed the folder. Then he looked directly at my father. Mr. Parker. Did you know your daughter has dedicated nearly a decade to helping people overcome addiction? No. Did you know hospitals, recovery centers, and courts trust her professional judgment? No. Did you know she's passed every background investigation required for this work? My father lowered his eyes. No. The judge folded his hands. So the woman you've repeatedly called a drug addict has actually spent years helping people escape addiction. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence was overwhelming. Then Rebecca stood. Your Honor, we'd like permission to introduce additional evidence regarding the trust. Proceed. She walked to the evidence table and placed several binders in front of the judge. These include certified financial records, independent audits, loan agreements, and internal emails. The judge began reading. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The expression on his face slowly changed. Finally, he looked at my father. Mr. Parker. Did you authorize a $2.8 million guarantee from the family trust? My father's attorney immediately stood. Objection. The judge raised a hand. Sit down. The attorney slowly returned to his seat. The judge repeated the question. Did you authorize it? My father swallowed. Yes. Were all beneficiaries informed? No. Were they required to be informed? Silence. The judge turned another page. This email appears to show discussions about preventing Ms. Parker from reviewing financial records. Rebecca nodded. It has been authenticated, Your Honor. The judge looked at Ethan. Mr. Parker. Ethan shifted nervously. Did your company receive financial support from the trust? Yes. Were you aware the trust guaranteed your private business debt? He looked at my father. Then back at the judge. Yes. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. My aunt's smile disappeared. Several relatives stared at Ethan in complete disbelief. For years, they had believed I was the family's greatest embarrassment. Now they were discovering who had truly placed the family's future at risk. Then something happened that I never expected. My mother slowly stood up from the gallery. She wasn't called as a witness. She simply looked at the judge. Your Honor. The courtroom turned toward her. I need to say something. The judge nodded. Go ahead. Tears filled her eyes. I believed my husband. She looked directly at me. For 10 years. I believed every word. Her voice broke. But 6 months ago, I found financial statements hidden in Richard's home office. My father's face turned pale. I confronted him. He told me to stay out of it. She reached into her purse. I brought copies. The courtroom froze. Rebecca looked stunned. The judge accepted the documents. Within seconds, he realized they matched every financial record we had already submitted. My father closed his eyes. He knew it was over. The lies that had survived for 10 years were collapsing in a single afternoon. But the biggest surprise hadn't happened yet. Because the judge had just asked the court clerk to bring him one sealed envelope that had been filed with my grandmother's original estate documents years earlier. No one in my family knew what was inside. Not even Rebecca. When the judge looked at the name written on the envelope, his expression changed completely. And he quietly said, I believe everyone in this courtroom needs to hear this before I make my final ruling. The judge held the sealed envelope in his hands for a few moments. The courtroom was completely silent. This document, he said, was filed by the late Margaret Parker with her original estate plan. He carefully broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. At the bottom, my grandmother's signature. The judge looked around the courtroom. With the court's permission, I will read the relevant portion. No one objected. He began reading. If you're hearing this letter, it means my family has reached a point where trust has been replaced by suspicion. He paused before continuing. I have watched my granddaughter, Evelyn, face more hardship than anyone should. I have also watched her quietly rebuild her life with honesty, compassion, and dignity. I felt tears forming in my eyes. I had never known this letter existed. The judge continued. If there is ever a question about who should help protect this family's future, my answer is simple. He looked directly at me before reading the final sentence. Choose the person whose character was tested, not the person whose image looked perfect. The courtroom was motionless. No one spoke. My father stared at the floor. Ethan looked as though the weight of every lie had finally caught up with him. The judge placed the letter beside the financial records. I have reviewed the testimony, the financial evidence, and this letter. He looked toward my father. Mr. Parker, this court finds that Ms. Evelyn Parker has demonstrated years of responsible conduct, professional integrity, and financial responsibility. He turned another page. The court also finds that significant financial decisions involving the family trust were made without proper disclosure to all beneficiaries. My father's attorney quietly closed his briefcase. He knew there was nothing left to argue. The court orders an independent forensic audit of the Parker family trust. A soft murmur spread across the room. Until that audit is complete, Richard Parker and Ethan Parker are suspended from making any further decisions regarding trust assets. Then came the words I never expected to hear. Ms. Evelyn Parker will serve as temporary co-trustee to ensure the trust is managed transparently during the investigation. For 10 years. My family had insisted I couldn't be trusted. Now the court was placing its trust in me. After the hearing ended, people slowly began leaving the courtroom. Some relatives avoided looking at me. Others quietly apologized. My aunt walked over first. I believed things I never should have believed. I simply nodded. I hope one day you'll forgive me. I already have, I said. Holding on to anger would have only made me carry the same weight you did. She lowered her head and walked away. A few minutes later, Ethan approached. For the first time in our lives. He looked like an ordinary man instead of the family's golden child. I'm sorry, he said. I should have stopped Dad years ago. You could have. I know. He looked down. I was afraid of losing everything. I answered quietly. And because of that, you almost lost something much more valuable. He understood exactly what I meant. Finally. My father walked toward me. His shoulders looked smaller than I had ever seen. I owe you an apology. I waited. I spent 10 years punishing you for the hardest season of your life. His voice trembled. I kept seeing the daughter you were at 23. Instead of the woman you became. Tears filled his eyes. I was wrong. For years, I had imagined this moment. I thought hearing those words would erase the pain. It didn't. But it gave me something better. Peace. I accept your apology, I said. But trust isn't rebuilt with one sentence. He nodded. I know. It's rebuilt with actions. 6 months later. The forensic audit uncovered multiple financial violations. The trust recovered millions of dollars that had been placed at unnecessary risk. The properties remained in the family. Clear financial safeguards were established. Ethan accepted responsibility and stepped away from managing family finances. My father retired from the trust entirely. As for me, I continued doing the same work I had always loved. Helping people rebuild their lives. Only now. My own family finally understood what I had been doing all those years. At Thanksgiving that year, something happened that made me smile. A distant cousin asked my father. So, what does Evelyn do these days? For years, I already knew his answer. But this time, he smiled proudly and said, my daughter helps people find their way back after life knocks them down. He looked at me. And I'm lucky she never gave up on herself, even when I gave up on her. For a moment, the room was completely quiet. Then everyone smiled. Not because the past had disappeared, but because the truth had finally replaced it. And I realized something I'll never forget. People may define you by your worst chapter. But if you keep moving forward, life eventually gives you the chance to write a better ending. The past may be a part of your story, but it should never write your ending. Only you have the power to decide who you become.